Welcome to another edition of HorseCenter, everyone. I am Brian Zipsy, and as always, I have the terrific pleasure of being joined by my co-host to the East Coast. That's Matt Schiffman. How are you today, Matt?
I'm good, Brian. We got a little bit of a January thaw here. The temperatures are rising, and I feel like I'm knee-deep in the Kentucky Derby Trail.
You're knee-deep in it, Matt. That's interesting. Matt, hey, we talked a little bit about doing Pegasus preview stuff today, but we're gonna double tease that one. We're gonna wait just a little bit longer to really diving deep. Boy, we've got a theme going already, Matt, and I'm not sure I like it. But we're gonna wait just a little while next week to dive deeply into that Pegasus field, the richest race in the world. Now it's going to be Derby, Matt. We got 3 preps coming. We didn't expect to have 3, but the Jerome got moved back. We also had some nice performances from last weekend that we want to talk about a little bit too. But let's start in the Big Easy, down in New Orleans, just off the French Quarter, Matt, fairgrounds for the Lecomte Stakes. I think it's the deepest field we've seen for this crop since the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. And for my money, the top 2 are the ones to beat. I'm talking about Principie Ihram and Instilled Regard.
Yeah, it's a full field that they've assembled down at the fairgrounds, and those 2 are certainly the headliners, but there's a few others in there. And personally speaking, you know me, Brian, I always find a horse that comes out of the Lecomte and the Louisiana circuit that I kind of fall for, and those Louisiana circuit horses have shown well and done well in the Derby, but they haven't won one in a while. But got a couple of good ones in here.
I believe Gunrunner was on this trail not too long ago, so we know good horses certainly do winter in New Orleans, and we think this year will be no different. As Matt alluded to, a 14-horse field is set for Saturday's Lecomte. Let's talk first about the horse we expect to be the favorite. Principie Ihram drew the 12 hole, and this highly regarded son of Tappet for trainer Steve Asmussen could not look more impressive in his first 2 starts. One was a maiden race at Churchill Downs, but then he also got an allowance race at the fairgrounds.
Yeah, he sure did. And in both of those races, he was nothing but impressive, winning both of those races by open lengths, the maiden race by like 6 lengths, and then the allowance race just blowing the field away by more than 11 lengths. Both of those races earned good speed figures for this son of Tappet. And like you said, it's trainer Steve Asmussen. He's one of the big name trainers who has never won a Derby, and not just Principie Ihram in here. He's loaded with 3-year-olds this year.
Yeah, Asmussen is. There's a few big name trainers. I think we'll talk about Chad Brown at some point today. But yeah, you're seeing some of the bigger trainers really have a lot of horses. Dale Romans being certainly one of them, and of course Bob Baffert and Todd Pletcher. But getting back to Principie Ihram, he's speedy, but he doesn't look like he needs to be on the lead. He's not a need the lead type of horse. The 12 hole makes this a tough spot, and I think we also need to talk about what a big step up in class, because I don't know that he really beat anything in those first 2 races. That with the outside post, it's a real test. If he passes this one impressively, we got to start talking about him as one of the absolute favorites on the road to Louisville. But I think the horse to beat in my mind is the second favorite probably, and that's the Jerry Hollendorfer trained California shipper Instilled Regard, because I'm looking at his 4 races, Matt. He's only won once, but if you look at those 4 races, he's run well every time, and he's really run against good races. There can be good horses. There can be no doubting that Instilled Regard brings a level of class into this field at fairgrounds.
Yeah, I think from the get-go with this horse, and when I say that, I go back to the fact that he was $1 million 2-year-old purchase, so he was well regarded, this son of Arch, as a physical specimen, and he's starting to live up to that amount of money that they spent. He was, of course, part of that 3-horse battle in the Los Al cash call Futurity. That was the one with the controversial disqualification of Salamini. And if you remember, leaving the steward's decision aside at this point, that Salamini drew off to win by about a length, and that left Instilled Regard battling very, very, very gamely with McKinzie. Instilled Regard was kind of in the middle of those two, and maybe in some ways took some of the worst of the bumping that was going on. And like you said, Brian, I don't think it's a big negative that this horse only has that maiden victory.
Yeah, he's got experience, in those 4 races, 3 being of maiden races. He was running against horses who moved down to stakes racing, Matt, and then his maiden win was impressive. And then as that race, his one real graded stakes race, the Losal Cash Call Futurity, he certainly was the horse that took the worst of it in the middle. McKinzie did come out a little bit. McKinzie was eventually put up, which seemed like a strange call. And then certainly Salamini, the eventual winner, who went by, but not easily or not by a lot, certainly came in. So Instilled Regard was in the middle and getting bumped the worst. He finished 3rd of the 3, but we know Salamini and we know McKinzie are very, very good horses and highly regarded top 10 horses on this trail. So Instilled Regard, Son of Arch, he should really take to 2 turns, and I think you can see that in his racing already. His last 2 out of distance were strong. So I think he's got a pretty big advantage over the other favorite, Principie Ihram, simply on experience and who he's raced against. Now, like Matt said, it's not a 2-horse race by any means, and one of the more interesting entrants in this Lecomte, this good Lecomte field, is Wonder Godot. Mark Casse, speaking of loaded barns, Mark Casse seems to be loaded for bear on the distaff side. So he's got a lot of interesting 3-year-old fillies running around the country. He's got 2 of them running at Fairgrounds on Saturday. He'll have Heavenly Love in the filly version, the Silver Bullet Day, but he's going with Wonder Godot against the boys, it looks like, here in the Lecomte. And, other than a tough trip, really, in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies, she's been very impressive, and she dominated last time at Aqueduct in a slightly slow Demoiselle.
And this is a talented horse. It's she's a daughter of Medagliadoro. That sold for over $300,000 as a 2-year-old, that has already won 2 graded stakes, has shown tremendous versatility, having won on turf and dirt and synthetic already. And Mark Casse has spoken out and said, hey, fillies run against the guys all the time in Europe. Why shouldn't it be going on here? And of course, he's one who knows, having taken Tepin over there and beaten the boys in England. So bravo for Mark Casse for giving this talented horse a try in here.
Yeah, I've been saying this for years, Matt. I think America lacks adventurous nature when it comes to running good fillies in stakes races for the male against the males, and I think Wonder Godot fits in here. She won't be my top pick. The Demoiselle, I wonder about. It was a very, very slow pace, so it's kind of a strange race, but she certainly was best that day. Like I said, Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies, she had some trouble and wasn't embarrassed there. And like you said, turf, synthetic, and dirt. So obviously a filly of class, and it wouldn't shock us a bit to see her run well Saturday at Fairgrounds. We got to talk about, if we're going to preview this Lecomte, Matt, I think it's about time we talk about Larry Jones a little bit. Larry Jones has had a lot of success at Fairgrounds over the years, and he comes in here with a 3-pronged approach in the Lecomte with Cowboy Karma, who's already shown to be a fast horse and has run in some strong stakes races. And then a couple others, Prince Lucky, Pennsylvania bred, who's coming off a Pennsylvania bred stakes win, and Believe in Royalty, who's an extremely well-bred Larry Jones trainee in here, who disappointed a little bit last time, but still might have a high ceiling. So Larry Jones, any one of those 3 deserves some look here in the Lecomte.
Yeah, and Cowboy Karma, saying a little bit more about him, he's got a good bit of experience, a lot of races in compared to some of these other horses, won a stake at Delaware Park, and he ran in that big key race Champagne Stakes and finished fourth in there. As that race played out, it kind of broke down on the front end with a battle for the win between Forenza Fire and Good Magic. But Cowboy Karma was battling head-to-head with Enticed, who, as we know, went on to win a big race in Kentucky and is a very talented horse. So Cowboy Karma has experience and I think has some upside. And when you're trained by Larry Jones, you're in pretty darn good hands.
Absolutely. One of my favorite trainers, actually. Cowboy Karma is the one I like best of the three from the Jones trio. I will be a little hesitant in my liking him too much in this spot, though, because I think Cowboy Karma might be a horse who, as it moves along, is better suited at one turn. And he's been running one turn, the Champagne included. So 2 turns, I'm not as sure about Cowboy Karma, but dangerous on speed and class for sure. There's several others in here that we haven't even mentioned. Zeke might be a pretty good horse. Lone Sailor has a strong closing kick. But maybe the most interesting of the longer ones, also from the Asmussen barn, Matt, is Zing Zang and Zing Zang. Zing Zang? I believe it's Zing Zang. Zing Zang reminds me just in form a little bit of another Asmussen horse who went on to win the Belmont. That's Creator. Doesn't have a lot of early speed, but he seems to be improving with every start, and he's coming off a nice rallying win last time.
Yeah, and Asmussen is also giving Snapper Sinclair a shot in here, a talented City Zip who has 2 wins on the turf. So I guess they're going to take a shot and see if this City Zip might like the dirt a little bit, which some of them do sometimes.
Oh, yeah. City Zip is a sire, or was a sire, obviously, who could produce horses for turf and dirt. All right, Matt, I'm going with Instilled Regard to pull a mild upset over Principie Ihram in here, but it should be a fun race. You have a top pick for me?
I'm going to go with Principie Ihram in here. I think that this horse has got the tactical speed to overcome that outside post, and I think he's the real deal.
Chalk again. All right, that's fine. Principie Ihram looks like a real talent, so we look forward to this one. Matt, the Jerome was scheduled for a while ago. All the cold weather out east has pushed it back all the way to Saturday. It didn't look like the greatest Kentucky Derby prep before, and I don't suspect when it's drawn today that it'll be much different. Forenza Fire sure looks like the horse to beat on class alone. The Champagne winner also won a graded stakes at Saratoga. He beat Good Magic, and we talked about the Champagne a little bit. So Forenza Fire certainly is the horse to beat in here. Didn't do a whole lot in the Breeders' Cup out at Del Mar, but back now in New York and going against a much easier field. Is this all about Forenza Fire on Saturday, Matt?
But yeah, I don't think it's just Forenza Fire, but I don't think the field is going to come up with any new horses and might possibly lose a horse or two. But, you know, in preparing for the show, I watched that replay of the Champagne again, and Forenza Fire was very impressive in that race, making such a big move, wide move around the turn and mowing down that field. And just to emphasize it again, it was Good Magic, the Breeders' Cup juvenile winner, that he went by. And in preparation for this race, Jason Service, the trainer, has said that heading into the Breeders' Cup, Forenza Fire was under the weather, had a bit of a fever that broke a few days before, and never quite got back to 100% when they ran him. But you mentioned Dale Romans earlier, Brian, as another one of those big-name trainers who hasn't won the Derby, who's loaded with 3-year-olds. He's got one in here named Seven Trumpets that has a maiden and allowance win, and kind of reminds me of a horse that Romans brought up to the New York Trail last year and won one of the stops with J-Boy's Echo. In that this is a horse that I think that is improving and getting better and could possibly give Forenza Fire a little bit of run for his money.
Well, maybe I'm a little down on this Jerome field, Matt, but you're right. Forenza Fire, throughout the Breeders' Cup, and Forenza Fire obviously is a very nice 2-year-old last year and certainly deserves strong favoritism here. And the only other horse in the field that I could see, I really don't see much class at all in this Jerome, was Seven Trumpets. And Seven Trumpets is coming from my neck of the woods here in Louisville. I do wonder if he's 5 or 6 down on the Roman's depth chart this year among 3-year-old colts, but that just speaks how deep barn Romans has for Derby contenders. Roman wants to win the Derby, and Seven Trumpets has done absolutely nothing wrong after debuting in Ellis Park, where he wasn't completely geared up, which Romans tends to do with very good horses. He came to Churchill ready to run. He's won 2 in a row. The first one was an impressive rally down the stretch where he won off easily. And the last one, he had to fight a little bit to do it. But both of those races, 6.5 furlongs at Churchill Downs, showed me that this is a good developing horse for Romans. And if anybody steps up and gives Forenza Fire a real threat in the Jerome, I would say it has to be Seven Trumpets. Unfortunately, that Forenza Fire exacta over Seven Trumpets, Matt, might not make your bankroll get much bigger.
Yeah, I agree with that. I would be surprised if there was anything but these two in contention coming down the stretch at Aqueduct. The only other factor is that with the cold, with the extreme cold and the snow we had up here, both Aqueduct and Belmont Park, where Forenza Fire is stabled, the track was not only was racing canceled, but the track was closed for training for a significant period of time, which meant that the exercise that these horses got was probably just shed rowing. So will that be a factor in the favorites' preparation? I don't know, but it's something that I just need to throw out there.
Good info, Matt. All right, Matt, let's go to the final graded stakes on the Derby Trail this weekend. It comes actually on the holiday Monday out at Oaklawn Park. Oaklawn Park is opening up, which we're excited about. The Smarty Jones, again, another race that hasn't been drawn yet, but we're expecting a big field, as Oaklawn often gets. And it looks like Baffert, a horse that was scratched out of the Sham Stakes, not to run against his stable McKinzie out there. Marino will rule the favoritism in the Smarty Jones, and he's a horse I like a lot, but much like another horse I was talking about, Cowboy Karma, earlier, I really think the future of Marino is one turn, very fast, very good sprinter. In fact, I think he's going to be a very, very good sprinter, but I don't know if this is his game, and I wonder if he's a vulnerable favorite in the Smarty Jones.
Yeah, could be, Brian, and there's a few others that we'll talk about that I think could be legitimate challengers. But like you said, Marino has not run a bad race. In his other races, he ran second behind Gravitos in the Bob Hope, and we know that one went on to win the Springboard Mile and is a talented horse unto himself.
Yeah, actually, interesting. Gravitas in handicapping the Smarty Jones, you got to look at Gravitas because possibly the second choice in here is another horse that Gravitas beat, and that's Combatant. And I do like Combatant a little bit more. He had just a little bit of traffic trouble out at Remington Park for that Springboard Mile. Well liked out of the Asmussen barn again. And Combatant, I think, is a horse who got that experience around 2 turns and might be very tough in Smarty Jones. Probably the horse to beat in my eyes, and maybe the second, third choice. I think the other one that will get bet a lot is probably the Todd Pletcher horse Navistar. And Navistar's only won a maiden race, but he won it nicely at Gulfstream Park. He was also second to Mask in both horses' career debut.
Yeah, I think this is another one of those Pletcher runners. And like you said, Brian, in his first start, he finished second, but it was to Mask. And we certainly saw what Mask did last weekend on the Derby Trail. This is a highly regarded, this is your typical Pletcher, a highly regarded youngster. This is a son of Union Rags, who initially sold for $90,000 and then was pinhooked fans, which means was sold again. This one as a 2-year-old, and the price went up to $900,000 over that course of a year. This is a talented horse that Pletcher has prepared and has selected this Smarty Jones as his coming out party.
Absolutely, Matt. Pletcher's stable runs deep down in South Florida this year for sure. Navistar's going out of town. I don't necessarily think that's a negative on Navistar. Maybe he's not Pletcher's top 3-year-old, but highly regarded for a reason. He's got some speed, and Union Rags, certainly a sire that produces horses that can go 2 turns. Navistar was clearly second best to Mask in their maiden, and then was certainly best down at Gulfstream Park when he broke his maiden second out. So high hopes for Navistar in here. Combatant, again, was a horse who's a little bit lightly raced. Marino's actually got a little bit more experience than some of these, but Marino sprinting more in California. Gravitas beat them both pretty similarly, actually, so it's hard to know which one of those are better off Gravitas, reading Gravitas's form. Tap Daddy coming off a nice win. Asmussen again. Eben is cross-centered in both races, but he might be headed to Oaklawn over Fairgrounds. He's coming off a nice win after losing several races, but there's some interesting horses as well in the Smarty Jones. I think overall the Lecomte is the best of the 3, but the Smarty Jones certainly offers more options at good horses than the Jerome does.
Yeah, and I think in the Smarty Jones, I'm going to go with Navistar in there. I think that this could be a good horse, and if in fact for some reason I could get a Pletcher talent like that as the second or third choice, I'm going to take it.
Yeah. My guess is Navistar's the second choice and Combatant's the third choice, but I like both of them better than the favorite Marino in here. Although Baffert, we know Baffert has done well bringing 3-year-olds to Oaklawn Park in the past, and maybe Marino can carry his speed in this race. So should be another interesting race, Matt. We saw some big performances, as I mentioned earlier, out of 3-year-olds. I thought the biggest performance of all came from Mask. It was kind of a strange race as well, where he was facing some good horses in Bal Harbor and Dak Attack, but he just wasn't pressured on the pace and made things maybe a little bit too easy for him in the Mucho Macho Man.
Yeah, and that was to be expected. I wrote that on Horse Racing Nation in my preview of the race, that there was literally no horse in that field that had ever shown any interest or had ever run even close to the lead, and they took advantage of that, and with Mask, and Javier Castellano sent him to the lead, where he's a talented runner, where he could just get in a comfortable stride, and it wasn't just that, and then coming down the stretch just opened up so easily and continued to open up, even though Castellano had eased the horse up in the last 16th of a mile. So I'm one that's bullish on that performance, as opposed to others who are saying, "Oh, but you know, the pace was very slow."
Yeah, the pace was certainly slow, and it made things easy for him. But I am bullish on Mask as well, Matt. In fact, he's certainly moved. He was close to the top of my list earlier, and now he's moved even higher. Navistar, we know, is a good horse. He ran by in that maiden race. And then I tell you what, I don't think the Mucho Macho Man, we're going to learn a lot from the top 3 from this race because of the way the race was run. But on looks and on stride and efficiency of stride, Mask is just, he checks all the boxes for me. Mask is a super talented horse in my mind, just has everything I want to see as far as looks and efficiency of motion on the racetrack. I love what I see in Mask, so I can't wait till he gets tested. He hasn't been tested yet. And unfortunately, that Mucho Macho Man wasn't a true race, but you could see the talent just bursting out of the young son of Tappet, out of that Chad Brown barn, which also includes the Breeders' Cup Juvenile winner. Good magic. Speaking of big barns, Baffert and McKinzie were on display in the Sham Stakes. We know Marino was scratched out of it. Marino probably would have been his toughest competition in the Sham Stakes. McKinzie did what he needed to do in the Sham, man.
Yep, they took blinkers off the horse, and it seemed to help. He was, a little bit more relaxed, and coming down the stretch, he drew off nicely, it was the kind of victory that you would want to see in that kind of a small, undistinguished field.
Small and undistinguished, Matt. That's true. That's my feelings of the Sham as well. McKinzie did what he should do, what he needed to do, really, to maintain his spot as one of the top 3-year-olds in California. Unlike you, I thought his Los Al Futurity was actually a pretty good performance considering everything. Being part of the pace, being on the rail, bumping, and being very inexperienced and coming off a little layoff. So it was a nice progression forward, but again, not sure how much it means because I think it was such a, would you say, small and indistinguished field. All right, one more thing on the 3-year-old note. I'm going to go over to the distaff side, Matt, because I was really impressed with Midnight Bisou. Midnight Bisou is a filly that I had my eye on because she had run against Dream Tree twice, and Dream Tree was the Starlet winner, undefeated, multiple stakes winner. People are high on Dream Tree, but Midnight Bisou had trouble in both of those races, just lost a tight photo in both of those races, and I think has the ability to finish races maybe even better than Dream Tree. And this daughter, Midnight Lute, exploded in winning her maiden by winning the Santa Ynez, which was won by Unique Bella last year. Midnight Bisou moved way up my list of 3-year-old fillies and to a point where she might be number 1 as far as who's going to win the Kentucky Oaks. I really like what I see from Midnight Bisou, trained by Bill Spar, and again, a daughter of Midnight Lute.
Yeah, and everybody's got Derby top 10s and Derby top 12s and everything, but Brian always has his Kentucky Oaks contenders and folks. He does just as well with that Oaks list as on the Kentucky Derby. So keep that name in mind from Mr. Zipsy for the 3-year-old filly run to the Kentucky Oaks.
Yeah, and that again, that list is loaded with Mark Casse trained horses. Caledonia Road, of course, won the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. Fillies, kind of a wide open division right now, so it wasn't a huge step to find a filly that I really can see moving all the way up to number 1. And for me, Midnight Bisou's performance was good enough. We'll see if she wants 9 furlongs or not. Still a question, but definitely a talented filly to keep an eye on. Folks, that's our show for today. It was the Lecomte Jerome Smarty Jones preview show. We're looking forward to an exciting weekend on the Kentucky Derby Trail this week. Next week, we will be talking a little bit about what we saw, but also, of course, a real in-depth Pegasus preview. I want to thank you, as always, for watching. Thank you to our sponsor, the best contest site out there, Derby Wars. And also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel on Horse Racing Nation. Can I get a parting shot from you, Mr. Schiffman?
You certainly can. Great weekend. We got Derby preps, and we're going to start thinking about the Pegasus. 10 for sure in there already. So we'll lay them out for you next weekend.
Yes, and as always, we'd like to thank our producer, Brett Workman, for all the great work he does for us. And Matt, I'm hoping that you're not on the chalk when you make a top pick in the Pegasus next week. That's it, folks. We'll see you next week on HorseCenter.